Hi, welcome to the BariNation podcast, where we support the bariatric community with humor, humility, and honesty. I'm April.
I'm Jason.
I'm Natalie.
And today we're welcoming for the first time ever on the BariNation podcast, Miss Melanie Lindell. Hello, friend.
Hi.
We have been friends with you for, quite some time now. I can't believe this is the first time we're inviting you on the podcast, but we are so excited about our conversation with you today. If you, my friends, do not follow Melanie, if you don't know Melanie, today is the day that your life is going to change in all amazing ways. Not only is Melanie a patient and a member of our bariatric community, but she is a therapist that specializes in a lot of things that we as patients need ourselves. And today she's going to be teaching us about the imposter syndrome and the self-fulfilling prophecy, what these mindsets are, how they can prevent us from reaching our goals, but how we can also use them to reach our goals. So it's going to be kind of this like 1-2 punch, like, oh, you got to watch out, but wait, you can use this like ninja style. It's going to be awesome. So before we dive in, Melanie, would you please introduce yourself to our friends and followers that are listening or watching?
Sure. I'm Melanie, and I live in Bainbridge Island, Washington, and I'm a trauma therapist and also a bariatric patient. I'm 3.5 years post-op of Roux-en-Y, and my journey was very complicated in terms of its recovery, and it's been one of those scenarios where you pivot, and it has taught me a lot. It has grown me as a therapist, grown me as a person, and stretched me in ways that I didn't know I could be stretched, and yet somehow I'm still here and I'm still in one piece. And so I'm honored to be here, honored to talk to you guys. Love my work as a therapist, love the growing connections I'm making in the bariatric community, and look forward to sharing with you guys tonight.
And I absolutely love the story of how we all got connected with one another. It was a total fluke, wasn't it, Melanie? Like you just absolutely didn't know the community existed, and then one day you found it.
Yeah, so I'll give all props to Brisha, who's a bariatric patient, and she was doing a research study, and it all kind of started with Maddie Spar, where she posted like, hey, looking for, kind of research participants or whatever. And I didn't know anybody that had the complications that I'd had. And I thought, why not? I'll fill out this little form. And Brisha then, encouraged me to like tell my story, and all that. I was like, whatever. And at that point, and so then I don't even know how, but somewhere I saw the Bariatric Society was doing an event. They're looking for speakers. And I thought, oh, why not? And so I just kind of threw a few things out there. And like, I never had any intention of ever sharing my journey. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, they need an Instagram. Like, I don't even have an Instagram. So then I made one. And then I was like, oh, I guess I have to like tell my story. And so then it just sort of evolved. And then I'm like, oh, I'm a speaker, and then I'm at the event. So it just kept coming, and it's sort of like you fall through the door and you're like, I'm so glad I'm here. I had no imagination of being here, and I want to leave now. Like, so it's been a really meaningful thing. And then to have both, you, April, and Natalie to be like literally in Washington State, as no offense, Jason, but like to actually have people like right here, like it was just like, oh my gosh, like this is so cool, and nothing I could have ever created, which makes it that much more special. It's like you kind of fall through that door and you're like, oh, like there's a whole world here. I had no idea.
It's literally like Alice in Wonderland falling through the rabbit hole. It's like the longer you're down there, the more you're like, wow, there's stuff over here, and there's this nook and cranny, and like, let me just explore it all. It's so cool that we've created this kind of community, and I'm so glad that you literally stumbled upon it, because now we're friends.
I agree. Yeah.
Dude, one of the highlights of my holiday season was I didn't force you, Melanie, but I strongly encouraged you.
There are still bruises that I'm recovering from. I'm just real clear on that.
I never leave a mark. Never. I mean, maybe emotionally, but never physically. but to like get to hang out with you, on just like a friendship level, to just like do nothing, enjoy a meal, laugh a little bit, have time together. It just really changes the dynamic in the most positive way. it was good. And I know that was hard for you. So you definitely stepped out of your comfort zone for that one, but it was
Well,
all
the
for the good.
redemption is there are so many witnesses that your dog loves me more than you. So there's that. So.
I was just gonna say, Melanie is the dog whisperer. Like, Stella was just limp in her arms for like 45 minutes.
And like staring into her eyes, like, oh, I just love you. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Unbelievable.
So Melanie's a ninja, a dog whisperer, a therapist. I mean, she does it all, really.
All the things, all the things. Well, and speaking of all the things, we are very excited to lead into your expertise for today's conversation. The imposter syndrome and the self-fulfilling prophecy are mindsets that all of us have struggled with, especially as patients. And we're going to learn about them, right? What they are, how they present in our own lives, how we personally have dealt with them, right? Learn to kind of live with them, learn to move through them, and what we can do to kind of use these mindsets to help us achieve our goals. And I know that sounds a little bit crazy, but these are the mindsets that kind of keep us stuck. So we want to identify what they are, learn about them so that we can use them as a tool to really shift our trajectory when it comes to goal setting. So if you're watching or listening to this in January of 2023, our support focus this month is just how do we stay aligned to our goals? It's one thing to make them. It's the new year. We're pumped. We're excited. Yeah. But then in like 2 or 3 weeks, it tanks and we don't know where we're at anymore. And we just don't want that to happen anymore. So if you guys are good, I say, let's just dive in.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Well, I'll start with the imposter syndrome side, because I think, and then I'll also say, like, for both of them, and I'll say more of that in a minute, both of them have a positive side to them as well. And we'll talk about that. But traditionally, we think about imposter syndrome when we think about self-fulfilling prophecy as negative traits, negative mindsets, negative things that keep us from where we want to go in life. And there is some truth to that. So I think very simplistically, the imposter syndrome, is this, that you basically are afraid of being found out as a fraud. If I could just narrow all of the pieces down, like that's, you feel fraudulent. And the key piece of that is despite your education, despite your experience, despite what other people, like the feedback that you have about yourself will always look different if you're in the negative space of how other people see you. And you will have lots of reasons. Oh, that was a fluke. That was this, that was that, but then you will just like double down on all the places where it goes wrong. See, I knew it. This didn't work out, and all of those things. So I think if you hold on to anything about the imposter syndrome side, is that one, you're afraid of being found out as a fraud. And there's always that sense of despite whatever fill in the blank, goes on. And one of the things I like is there's all these subtypes, and I like some of the definitions that are out there, like the perfectionist, unless I'm perfect, I'm a failure. The natural genius, I should be able to pick up new skills and understand the material right away. The rugged individualist, asking for help is a sign of weakness. Right here. The expert, I'm not successful unless I know everything. And then the superhero is I'm always able to top perform regardless of what it is. And I should be able to please everybody in my life. And I think we can all sort of find maybe the one we lean on the most. And that is always story bound. There's a reason that one sort of rises to the surface for each person. And you'd have to do that digging of looking at your story to know, like, why is that? Well, rugged individualist, I can tell you a line in my life. Take care of yourself because nobody else will. Like that was a mantra hanging over me my entire life. Well, so you absorb that and then you become that, and so I think then that's where the crossover can turn into your self-fulfilling prophecy. You can look and identify each one of these subtypes and then look at what are the messages that I have on repeat in my mind, that sort of tie into that original sense of something has come into me that I've now taken on. And if I don't stay in that space, then I'm going to be found out as a fraud.
Well, I like how, like initially you said that the feeling of feeling like you're going to be found out as a fraud. Because in reality, when we really dig down deep into it, there's no data to support any of that. Because like you said, despite, that's where the data comes in. Despite all of the data to prove the feeling wrong, the feeling still persists.
Right.
And so that's really the important part. Is like, we can have the data for days, but the feeling is so strong that it just blinds. It's like pulls this curtain down over top of all the data we have. So I think that's one of the most important things that, in talking to you today, is figuring out how to dispel, because those feelings, like, we've all had them and they're so strong.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry. What strikes me as interesting is when you were going through that list, I have been relying on different types of imposters in different parts of my journey.
Yep.
Right. And I'm like,
and life as a whole. Life as a whole journey, and not like in and out of the journey.
Right. Like, the crazy thing is like, oh, well, I was feeling really bad about myself here, so I was relying on the perfectionist, but I was feeling, I was feeling something different here, so it was the expert. I mean, Jason, when we first started this podcast, I thought you were going to fly to Florida and push record on my computer, like fly here, because I was just like, we don't have all the things figured out yet. We don't know yet. Like, nobody's going to want to listen to us. We're just patient. Like, I think I went through all one of those categories in an hour every time we met.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I really wanted to, had you been closer, I would have, but I just had to verbally tell you to press record, because at the end of the day, we had blown through like 12 episodes. We could have had a whole season of a podcast done in the meetings that we had, if we just would have started recording from the jump.
Yeah. And it really held me back, and it held us back. And I can recognize that now, and I can use that as a tool to be like, oh, I remember when I did this before, it did not work out well. So I need to not, kind of repeat that cycle. And the
funny thing is you can actually project that onto other people, your part of that onto other people, because that's where, when we tell the story about how I don't read the show notes or go over the show notes, that was her thing. Like, the perfect preparedness, got to be ready. I put the time in, you got to do this, you got to read this. Otherwise, people are going to look at you like you're unprepared, like you're a fraud, basically. And so the projection part of it is is one of the pieces that's so interesting to me, is because it's not specifically just on the focus isn't specifically just on yourself all the time.
Right.
Yeah. And even later on, when we were toying with the idea of starting BariNation, right? Like, how many times were we like, yeah, we could do that. But there were so many hours of time where we just sat in that imposter syndrome, those different imposters. And we just took turns, round robin, like, okay, but what if we do this? And that's not going to work out. And we were just kind of bouncing off of each other. And as you were talking, Melanie, that's what I was thinking about, was just like BariNation, like just us just trying to get BariNation started, or even planning to make that a concept.
Oh my God, we beta tested it for a year.
Yeah.
A year.
Wow.
Yeah. And every stop we came to was, is there enough value? Are people going to want to do this? Are people going to enjoy being in here? Are they going to find what they get for what they, for what they're paying? And so, that is legitimately, like, every step of the way, we thought this about everything we added.
Yeah. And the other thing that strikes me as so interesting about both of these mindsets is especially when it comes to our bariatric journey, we have lost weight so many times, and we do have evidence that says you are not ever going to figure this out. Like, that is there. But what we can't wrap our brains around is that we're changing our lives in such dramatic ways. We've never actually lived that life before. So you don't have any evidence, right, for the contrary, but you rationally know, I couldn't have evidence because I've never lived this life before. I've never done something so drastic, right? It's like this, it's this really weird space to be in, because you're like, I got evidence for this, but it's for this, scenario. I don't have evidence for that. I just don't know. And you're constantly being pulled between kind of both of these two worlds. And we did the same thing with BariNation, right? Oh, I don't, oh, no, oh my God, right?
Well, I think if you look at, if we take, like, I'll go back to the five of the five subtypes, because like within our bariatric journey, like that, okay, so we go with the perfectionist, like, unless I'm perfect, then I failed. Well, like, let's just be honest, like, every one of us has admitted somewhere along the lines, online and, and individually, like, we haven't been perfect. And to go like the genius, I should be able to pick up all these new things. Well, how many things are thrown at you? That binder, is like, well, assuming everybody got a binder, I got a binder, it was so massive, and there's no way to digest all of it, when you're like, I'm just trying to recover. And then certainly for those of us that went through complications, like that whole manual got thrown out and a new one was being written every single day based on how I was doing. So then I eventually, this last year, what I call my very first year of actually engaging the binder, because this is the first year I didn't have a crisis. Well, I guess I should say last year now, that technically we're 2 days into the new year, but whatever. I haven't quite got to the 2023 yet in my head. But like, even that sense that somehow I should be able to pick up all of this stuff. Well, even all the phases of the journey, you can't know how to do soft foods when you're still on clear liquids, but somehow if I fail my first time at soft foods, then I'm screw up. Like, I should be able to figure it out, individualist, like I have to be able to figure this out all by myself. Why? And I feel sad for the people that don't have like surgical teams and dietary support and all of those things. But in a general sense, like, this should never be an individual like journey. Like, it's impossible to be successful if you're a rugged individualist, that somehow I have to hide my journey. I can't even tell people I had surgery, and I get maybe, like the virtual side of things and what, the implications, but in your private life, this should never be something you attempt alone, because it's impossible to manage all of it by yourself, and the expert, well, how? So I have to somehow be the patient and the physician, the patient and the nutrition. I mean, all that stuff, like that's a lot to ask of yourself. Like, it's not possible. And, so I think, and then the superhero, that I should be able to do all this and top perform all the time and please everybody while I'm doing it. Well, think about the holidays. Like, if you're hosting or going, like, oh, I can't eat there, I got to tell people this, or, like, you want to go out, but I'm not drinking, I'm not this. Like, there is a war just in that one segment of our life. It certainly applies to all areas, but, in relation to that bariatric journey, like, that is a massive setup for failure to come, for the self-fulfilling prophecy, which we'll get to, for it to actually not work out. And here's where it boils down to, is like that, like, somehow our worth got tied to these, this way of being, and that can come from, a lot of it's, usually family of origin type stuff. Like, if the only thing that was ever praised was your performance, well, hi, what do you think is going to happen for you? If all you heard was criticism, well, hi, you're going to take that on too. Like, so I think you have to really look at what are those early messages, and where am I reenacting that in my own life, and where am I taking on? Because none of this happens outside the context of your own story. You don't just wake up one day and all of a sudden perfectionist. That is so story bound, that are you willing to do the work to look at the stories so that your worth is not tied to these things?
What I guess, if you're listening to this conversation and you're like, oh yeah, no, this is me to a T. I see this, presenting in my life and in my bariatric journey. What are some things that we can do to, I guess, identify it, or to really understand maybe kind of like where that origin lives? And then how can we use this understanding to help us reach our goals?
Well, I think one of the things you can look at is the outcome, like, how valuable to you is the outcome? And I say that somewhat loosely. Obviously, we want success, but it is the stakes so high that if I don't figure this out, that somehow I'm going to disintegrate, love's not going to be there, something's not going to be there. You have to look at like how Like how much energy is behind whether this moment or this path or this way works out. Like that to me is one of the first things you look at, like how invested, are you in the outcome in terms of your own sense of worth?
Wow, that really hit me, because that's what I had to do at the end of last year, 2022, was be like, okay, these were the outcomes of these situations. Did I actually want my energy to go toward that? Or did I just do that because I put that weird pressure on myself to do it because of the fear of being an imposter, or because of the fear of how I'm going to be perceived? Like, and I mentioned this before we started recording, but I saw a graphic not too long ago that said, where your mind goes, your energy flows. And that has been sticking with me the last couple of days. And you really do have to sit down when you start to feel those imposter syndrome feelings, or you start talking to yourself in those ways. Like, is this like even worth my time? Like, is this worth the heartache or the stress? Like, is this even worth it? Like, I think that's something that we just, especially as bariatric patients, just do not ask ourselves. Is this worth it?
Well, and the thing that I just keep thinking about too now is like, oh my God, I feel like last year, all three of us, and Melanie, I'm sure you did too, we battled one of these hardcore. And it was almost like we all got to this place where it was like, okay, either I figure this out or I am doomed. Like I am going to go backwards. I mean, Jason, I'm just going to use your Portland. I mean, you know what I'm going to say, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
But I mean, you were to the point where it was like, this is either going to make or break me, right? Like along this bariatric journey, you think I can't take any more, like, oh my God, things just, you exit the honeymoon, you get to this like stage where you really need to commit to your bariatric life, and you bump up against whatever your biggest one is here. And until you can go to yourself or somebody else and go, dude, I'm feeling like a straight up fraud, it's never going to let go of you. It's going to have this grip on you. And I just know the relief that I felt, Jason, when you and I talked in Portland. I know it was extremely emotional, but finally I just kind of felt like, oh, there it is. Okay, we've named it. It's out in the light now. Like, okay, let's deal with this.
Yeah, and nothing like 2 minutes before we step out on stage for me to have a complete meltdown. It's perfect timing. Like I couldn't have nailed it any better. But no, honestly, that legitimately was what pushed me through the rest of the night to be able to do all the things that we did. Was that, like, you were there for me in that time where I was able to not only name it, but just dump everything out and getting it off my chest, speaking it into the, like, because we all have the thing like where it hangs out in the back of your head and you don't really know that it's real or not until you actually write it down on a page and look at it and read it, or you say it out loud. So saying it out loud for me made it real, made it tangible, and realized that it was a problem. And it was something that I really needed to put to the side until I could unbox it the right way and figure out how to deal with it moving forward. Because you're not always going to have the time once you discover what it is at that moment to be able to unpack all of it. So don't beat yourself up about that either, because it's not going anywhere. You know what it is now, you know where it's put. So when you get done doing whatever it is you're trying to do, like me with the whole award show, once it was over, then I come home and I figure out, okay, now I got work to do, because now I know exactly what it is. And I may not know why it is, but I know what it is. And at least that's where I can start.
Well, the thing about that is that space of, in that moment with the three of you, there was something of that you knew safety. There was enough safety to bring your vulnerability. And that's another key component of combating it, is like, so when I went to see my surgeon at my 3-year appointment, I was trembling inside, because it was the first time I was literally going to the doctor where the number on the scale was up. And for me, that was failure. It wasn't up to, any, astronomical amount, but I literally, from the point I first met him until, my appointment in what was really September, of 2022, every single time every single time. And he and I saw each other a lot with all my complications. Every single time the number was always going down. And I went in, there was tears. I felt like a failure, all of these things. And the honesty that was brought around me, both by my dietitian and my surgeon, and the love and compassion that they had for me, they were able to speak truth, over me in a really safe way. First of all, they said, I would have expected the number to be a lot higher. It's normal, your lowest numbers is not where you land. Like if you drop and then your body levels out, and where mine leveled out. And he was able to literally say, Melanie, your fitness is better than mine, and then he had enough foresight, because we've had so much conversation over the years, that he went after my Apple Watch. And I wasn't thrilled, but he went after it and just said, this tells you, and it's right there, this tells you whether you're okay or not. And that isn't okay, and it's that you give it too much power. And I think that's the thing that happens, is we give so much power and agency outside of our bodies to something, or a way of being, or whatever it is, the number on the scale, the pant size, you can fill in the blank with so many different things. And that is our ultimate sort of bear trap, where we get snared, is because at some point it's going to catch up to you. At some point it's going to get exposed. At some point it's going to happen. And if you've given so much investment to, again, the outcome going a certain way, that the number will never go up, again, it's so individual what that never is, or always. You can just use that, that extreme thinking. That's the piece that we have to keep working on sort of breaking down and telling ourselves the truth.
I envision that for so long, there was this part of me that was just a horrible part of me. It was the most awful, right? I worked so hard to keep that hidden, right? In a way, and in the shadows. And when I finally, with the help of my therapist, was able to speak that just to her, and just have her kind of hold me safely in that therapeutic environment, and just to be okay, what's happening? What are you feeling? It has your life crumble. And, and I know it sounds crazy, but we had that type of relationship where it was very serious at first. And then she was able to go, okay, has the stock market crashed? Has your house burnt down? Are you floating up to heaven? Because my worst fear was that it was going to kill me, and it was going to ruin me as a person. And how she described it is, she said, think about all of the anxiety, think about all the fear you've been holding on to, keeping this hidden. Mm-hmm. And now that it's in the light, you can see it for what it is. And it doesn't have to be the scary monster in the closet anymore, because it never really was a monster. It was just what you were doing to yourself, up here. And she said, now, every time you feel that, because you're always going to feel that you have to hide something. That's just how you're built. Okay. Remember this, and remember the relief that you feel. And the more that you practice this, the easier it's going to be for you to combat these and move past them when they go. And now I have no problem talking to Jason and Natalie about very intimate parts of my life and my journey. And I can talk about really intimate things in the BariNation membership community, in the support groups, in the classes, right? Hey, this is what I'm going through. This is what I'm experiencing. This is what I'm really scared about. This seems really dark right now. And I can get it out, but it is that safety.
And the beautiful part about it is just after you found all that out and kind of came to those realizations, not so much your mood or your attitude changed, but just kind of your overall being, your aura is just you've gotten a lot lighter in the way you present yourself and the way you talk to people, the interactions you have. You don't take yourself as serious as you used to. And it's led to better interactions, more meaningful interactions, not just with us, but with everybody. You've cut yourself a little slack. You've given yourself the space and grace you tell everybody else to give themselves.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring that up, Jason, because I was talking, my mom got to meet April and Jason in Portland. And, my mom every once in a while will watch our Instagram stories, or she'll, whatever, she'll watch an episode, whatever that may be. And she even said to me, oh, April just something about her just looks good. Like she just looks good. And she was like, it's not a weight thing. It just like, she just looks good. And I was like, I agree. Like, I think, I did not disclose any personal things, but I just said, I think, and it's something that we all had to work through, as Melanie said. Like, I think once you allowed yourself to be a little bit messy and a little bit like less perfect, that actually broadened your life and your perspective. And I think that's it. It shows, it ends up showing to other people.
Mhm.
So it was just interesting when you said that, Jason. I was like, oh, I have to say this because my mom, it was like, she doesn't really know you, but she kind of knew you.
Mhm.
She could kind of just tell.
Yep. Well, that's the same reason that we knew something was wrong with Jason. And we basically confronted him in a very kind, safe, loving way. Like, bro, something is up. We know this about each other. And as you get to know people in the community, it's true. You can tell, and we've all experienced this, right? Like you're watching somebody's story and you're like, oh, something has shifted. Something is very different. And it's this work that makes those shifts happen. But we think it's related to our weight or to our size or shape or whatever. It's not. That's why we're always saying this is the work of weight loss surgery.
Well, the more you're able to get out of like hypervigilance, and that, and that's this, and that is a trauma response. Like that's what it is. You're hypervigilant. Like you're always looking for danger. You're looking, for something. And so you have to stay so alert that at the end of the day, you're like disembodied, where, you bring whatever was going on for you at the awards, into the room, and it's a safe room. And these two women that clearly love you and you love them, like they don't leave the room. They don't leave you. And that's one of our fears, is like, I have to work so hard at keeping these parts of me, outside of the room, that when they're actually brought in, then all that energy that I was expending, keeping everything at bay, and now it's here. And I realized, oh, like I'm still safe. In fact, I'm more safe because more of me is known and I'm still welcomed. That my body actually settles down and your countenance will change, and so it's like, I can be more of myself. People get better access to me. People enjoy me more, and I can enjoy me and the interactions more because I'm not in search of where's things going to go south.
Well, and the funny part about that you say that is it's happened to me 2 different times, and both of the times were before I was up on stage presenting to people. The first was at the first award show. I mean, at the first retreat when we were speaking. Like we were at lunch eating, and like I had my head on the table and I'm like deep breathing, not eating anything. And Sarah's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, sure, kind of, I guess, I don't know. And she's like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm getting ready to get up and speak in front of 200 people, and who am I? Like, I'm not anybody to get up and speak to anybody about anything. Like, what do I know? I just know what I went through, and we talk on the podcast and we do stuff, but why am I ever talking to these people?" And so it is such a powerful embodiment. Like it takes over everything. And even though I've been there before, cut to 3 years later when we're sitting at the award show and I'm still losing my ass, not knowing, like not able to bring it back together and realize that it's the same thing, just with a different lens on it. But I still let it completely, wipe me out. And so it really, that's one of the most important things that I think for myself I needed to get a grip on, was the fact that you don't just lick it once. It's the same thing as bariatric surgery. You're not just you're always going to be a patient, and this is always going to come around. Like we're not teaching you the one time to fix it and it's just good forever. We're just teaching tools to use when it comes about, because it will continue to come about. It's going to manifest itself in different ways.
Right. And there's the power of truth telling, like when we were talking before we hit record, that as I was thinking about getting ready for this, all of a sudden that imposter syndrome was coming. And I was texting with one of my best friends, and it was based on this meme that said, that what movie, was number one when you were 23 is how your year is going to go out. And mine is Independence Day. And so when she wrote like, things aren't looking great for you or for me, because hers was Batman Forever or whatever the title was for that Batman. And so when she responded, when I said, like, I'm actually feeling the imposter syndrome, like, who am I, to do all this, to speak on this. And she's like, well, you're going to have to combat aliens. You might as well start off with the podcast. And it was just something. And I think what the difference is, instead of like, that sense of doom, for you, Jason, or for me, it's like, can I just name that I'm nervous? Can I just name, like, because when we tell the truth and we actually like speak what it really is, then some of those bigger, kind of ways of thinking, that catastrophic thinking that tends to roll in for all of us, it may not silence it, but it will at least like dull it a little bit, to go like, yeah, I'm nervous, like me and my introverted self likes to, go in my shell and go into my bed and, and do my thing, and here I'm like, how many people watch this? And, like, what if I say something stupid, all the things that come out, and realize like, I'm just nervous, and that's normal. And I think we can start normalizing what, and telling ourselves the truth about what's really at play. I'm having a bad day, or I don't really want to track my food, or whatever, then it will at least combat some of these bigger sort of survival strategies we've used that are very maladaptive, but that's what we had access to.
And it's only 500,000 of our closest friends, Melanie. Don't worry about it. Hardly any.
Thank you. There's not Xanax. I need to find a Xanax that I don't have any. So
you're too deep into it now, sister.
Well, it makes me remember when I've been in therapy consistently for about 18 months now, which is like the longest I've ever consistently been in therapy. And there was one time where my therapist, and I've said this before on the podcast, she made me print out a like when you go to a school or a daycare or something, they have those like mood charts with the little pictures of like the little guys. She made me print those out. And anytime I felt an emotion that I couldn't find a name for, I had to go to the chart and I had to name it. I'm feeling frustrated, and I had to say it out loud. And it made me realize, and as I was listening to you, Melanie and Jason, and it made me realize that we never did that before. And the power in just naming, I'm nervous, or I feel like I'm an imposter right now. Like, and just actually physically saying it. I mean, it's the same as like when you go to the doctor because you're not feeling well and you don't know why. When they say, oh, you have the flu, or, oh, you have strep throat, there's relief in knowing what you have so that you can go and treat it. Mm-hmm. And it's the same with our feelings and our imposter syndromes. Like, you have to name it in order to treat it.
And the doctor asks you questions to get to the diagnosis of what that would be. How do you feel? What's making you feel like you have this? What hurts? What this? What that? So you can do the same thing with yourself to dissect exactly why and get to whatever that feeling may be.
And you have to answer honestly, just like what Melanie said. You have to be honest in what you're saying.
I've been saying this all year. This is what we're doing this year. We're answering our own damn questions.
Yeah.
We ask these questions of ourselves all the time, but we never give ourselves the space or the grace to answer them.
Yep.
If we just answered our own questions, we would lower the temperature. We could learn what our feelings are. We could identify them, and we can use these as a tool to help move us to a more accurate and a more like peaceful place in our bariatric journey and our life in general.
Right.
Because Jason, you so
true about you, right? This is a moment of my story. So I think what happens is we make this kind of banner that we live under, that if this doesn't go well, it has some kind of like global meaning about whether I deserve love, like who I am in the world and all that. And we have to, again, if you want to use that same language to lower the temperature, is we need to ground that to what it really is. it's this is where I'm struggling, this moment or this thing, but it is not the only thing true about my life. It's not the only thing true about who I am. And we have to be willing to risk saying that, again, if I spend all this time trying to hide this stuff and keep it out, then you've used up all the energy you need, and then of course the things that you actually need to do to be successful in your bariatric journey or in relationship or any other place, you've already expended all your energy. You have nothing left. So then we sabotage, ourselves, and we go back to old coping strategies, and that's what we end up in, like kind of the wash, rinse, repeat again and again and again. And then we wonder why things are. Could you try again? Okay, now Siri's joining our conversation. Excellent. Even though it's on Do Not Disturb. But that's that sense of like, we get mad at ourselves because, we haven't changed. Well, but if you just listen to what I said, like it's this kind of loop that we end up staying in because we keep using up all our energy to push back those pieces of ourselves that really need airtime in the room with people, because it will lower the temperature of them and realize, oh, okay, I'm nervous. Oh, maybe I have a little stage fright, maybe whatever those things are, like, okay. And you can like push back on those feelings, but when those feelings like have bigger meaning than what they're really intended to, then they actually crush us.
Well, yeah, it's like it's like you said, it's a blip of your life. It's like trying to describe an entire movie to somebody from watching the trailer. The trailer's not going to tell you everything about the movie. The trailer tells you bits and pieces of the movie, which is the same exact thing when these little things come up and happen. You're not going to be the little insecurity that you have at the time doesn't define who you are as a person. It's not going to write the rest of your existence on this planet before or after when the little blip happened. So that's one of the things you have to, like you had mentioned earlier, not giving it as much power. You have to take the power from it in order to get past it, because otherwise it will crush you. It'll consume you in many negative ways.
And that's, I think, a nice bridge into that whole self-fulfilling prophecy, because this is what ends up happening is we end up using, kind of the past as the predictor for the future, and it's not that the past doesn't have some degree of relevance for us to look at. The problem is, are you owning the context? Is the context the same? So like think about different, diets, different things you've tried. Okay, well, if you tried it when you were 16, well, what's your maturity level at that point? Like, what's your access to like all the things that resources you need, finances you need, support teams you need? It's not the same. So I think that's where one of the limitations of using only the past as a predictor. You then have to say, well, what is my maturity now? What is the context that I'm living in now? I have a new tool, like I have a sleeve or a Roux-en-Y or do a duodenal switch, or how you say that one. I always say it wrong, or the black band. I mean, there's a variety of things. And now the medications and all the other things that are available to you, there's BariNation, there's, your surgeon. So are you actually telling the more full story of like, what tools do I have? And if I didn't have those same tools, or let's just say my journey, I had all these tools, but I was just trying not to die the first 2 years. So I couldn't use them yet. And so there's not a muscle memory, because I didn't have 3.5 years to work on it. I've had a year, and so like being able to be honest, is what's partly going to break up, that pessimistic thinking, which is one of the character traits of, this is what always happens to me, that never works for me. You fill in the blank, you fill in the blank, you fill in the blank.
Well, luckily I have at least a couple of more years of maturity since I was 16. So not many, but a couple at least.
Well, and that makes me remember too, like I worked with Rodolfo, another one of our experts in the community. I worked with him personally, and there were several times where I'd say, yeah, but this happened when I was younger. Like we can take my 2 prior surgeries into this, right? Like I was 15 when I had my first surgery. It was 2009. So like the internet was a baby. There were not,
Cutting edge of technology.
I mean, I was on MySpace at the time, so that tells you a lot. And it's just when he told me to say really ask myself, like, what resources did you have?
Mhm.
And you actually sit down and count them. I had none. And so for me to think, oh, I'm a failure because for all those years, right? For 10 years, I told myself, you're a failure, you didn't do anything right, you know, whatever that may be. For me to tell myself that for 10 years was really just discounting myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're really saying, Melanie, is like, okay, if you stop and really count the resources that you had at whatever time that trauma or that period of time was, you'll actually really be very, very surprised at how little resources you had at that time.
Yep. And you know what I've really been focusing on this last year and this year too is, okay, fine. If I want to go down the self-fulfilling prophecy journey, you have at it. Like, these are literally the conversations that I'll have. And I'll be like, okay, yeah, let's talk about how great it was back then. The question I always end up asking myself is, and how did that work out for you? Right? Were you able to achieve what you wanted to achieve, thinking and doing and acting all of those things? The answer is, of course, no. Right? No. I achieved a lot, and I've done a lot of great things in my life, but there were some areas of my life that I just absolutely struggled with. And now the struggle is real again in my bariatric life. And we just keep coming back to that saying, if we want to live a different life, we have to live a different life. So when I start going down this negative self-fulfilling prophecy, right, then I just start thinking like, yeah, and you did all of these things, you thought all of these things, and none of that helped you in any way. So why would I keep doing the thing that didn't help me in the first place? Because it's comfortable? Because that's what's on repeat up here? Okay, now I know what the work is. I need to fight through the discomfort. I need to remix my mixtape up here, right? Like, again, this is the work of weight loss surgery. It's this. It is rewiring these mindsets that we have just been holding on to that are not serving us in any way, shape, or form.
And one of the hardest things to do is to celebrate, you know, and so often I tell my clients, like, you know, we have this super highway to kind of our old way of thinking. Okay. You know, this is kind of what we do on repeat. And you have to start putting, like, I just imagine flags, because what we're doing is trying to build new neural pathways that the outcome can actually look different. You know, this actually can be successful. So in order to get those neural pathways developed, you have to start with, you know, something as simple as, you know, I tried journaling for the first time, right? Or I tracked my water today. Well, it doesn't count because I didn't do it for 21 days and the habit's not there. And you can, you know, you basically discount, you know, this moment. And I think if you learn to say, you know, like, I challenged my head hunger today, that is a flag. You know, I don't need to do it 100 times before it counts. You know, I did it today. You know, I meal prepped, you know, I went to the gym for the first time. I tried something new, all of those things. And if you start doing that, then when you're faced, you know, like, your brain now has to go like through a slalom course, and it will actually, oh, there might be another way. You know, that's part of the habit change. That's part of all of that, is like, you have to actually name those things that you're doing along the way. It's not when you cross the finish line. You won't actually cross the finish line, you know, if you don't begin to identify, these are the things that I'm actually doing different. And these are the things that are going to lead to these changes. You know, when I started my fitness journey, you know, I mean, I have the benefit is I used to play soccer. I used to be an athlete, used to ski, you know, all that. So there's a muscle memory of training and, you know, all those things, but long, you know, past, just like you, Jason, just a skosh behind my 16, you know, at this point. And, but I just started like, I'm going to put my gym clothes out the night before. Okay. Well, now I put 3 days out. I don't know. I'm a weirdo, you know, but that's fine. I put Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday out. Why Thursdays in there? I don't know. There's room for it, but just Monday through Wednesday. So I got to get them out, you know, so I can get in my little OCD habits or whatever. But I just started doing those things, including untying my shoes. Oh, I can't go. There's a knot. It's gonna take too long. I mean, all the garbage, that you get stuck in your head. Like I can literally walk into my shoes and keep walking out the door. Well, now I don't literally need to do that. It is ingrained to me that I actually like starting my day that way. But that is day after day after day after day was that one item. And I think if you can allow yourself to break, this journey into little bits and say, I'm, even though just focusing on my water is not going to do everything I need to, sure, I agree. But if you focus on your water, that has become so like habitual that it won't even be a thought anymore. And then you start building in the other things. But what happens is you try to take the whole thing on as if somehow I'm going to memorize this binder. I'm going to get it all figured out. And of course, then life hits you, as it will. We live in an unpredictable world and we act like we don't, and that's the problem, and then all of a sudden, then when we're stressed, we go back to the thing that's most familiar to us, whether that be food, some kind of sabotage, some kind of whatever. And then that's where you get stuck in sort of either, the imposter syndrome. And now I got to fake it, because I can't let anybody see that I failed. And then I've got this constant war in my head, about self-fulfilling prophecy. And at the end of the day, what we believe ultimately drives the outcome. If I think that I'm going to fail, you will. Because you will either do or not do the things to ensure, whether that's wittingly or unwittingly, like it's not always conscious, but it will drive you to the outcome that you most believe in your mind.
Right. Well, I mean, our brains are wired to win, and we can win by failing. Right. So we can look for those things. And right, I mean, all I was thinking, well, I mean, not all that I was thinking, but it's that all or nothing thinking that's just so prevalent, right? I have to do all the things or none of the things count, which stumbles, right? That really stumbles us. And the other thing too, that for me really used to get in my way and still does, is I think it has to be some big, bold thing for it to count, right? I got to check everything off the list. I have to do all 8 things, whatever, big, huge, workout thing. No, it's actually these tiny little mundane bariatric tasks that we have to do day in and day out that lead to these big, huge results. But my brain wants to tell me that the little things don't matter. It's only the big things, which is the complete opposite of truth. But I don't want to do the work because it's easier to just say, oh, it's not working, right? Instead of just doing the damn work. Even though I want the trade-off, I want that reward. It's a lot of work though. We're wired for ease, right? Like you just keep butting up to all of these things that you are hardwired for. And yeah, no wonder why we get to the point on some days where we're like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I'm just so tired of doing the work. Every direction I look, I'm butting up against something that is new for me. Right. But if we're using these little tips and tricks that you're teaching us along the way, we will have the energy to do that work.
And
right?
And a big piece of that is the truth. Like you don't know how to handle the puree stage when you're in the liquid stage. And so it's that sense of I've yet to arrive there. So how is it that I think that I should be able to master it until I'm in it, until I figure out what do I butt up against, because it's different for every person. What those things are. Some people, they can be a master at this part and this is where they stumble, but it's like that somehow I think that I should, because I had the surgery, that somehow it's, that they didn't just work on my abdomen. They went upstairs and they, realigned all the things that are, like distorted in my mind. And it's like, you don't even know what those things are until you crash into the wall. And can we normalize that is going to happen? And when it happens, then we got to move towards things like self-compassion. We got to move towards things like telling ourselves the truth. We got to move towards community. We have to move towards normalizing these feelings of, that I feel inadequate. I don't know what to do. And what not knowing is not failure. I'll borrow from the language you've used, I think mostly in book club, is that sense of, that failing is your first attempt in learning. And can we let that be the definition? I made an attempt, and I need to tweak some things. That's normal versus that's failure.
Well, think about how many people in history have talked about, you know, inventions that they've come out with or things that have happened and how many times they failed before they actually got it right and made it work. Like, think about, okay, so when you were talking about how, you know, you have to be honest with yourself and speak, because if you speak it into existence, it's going to happen. So think about when Steve Jobs first tried to bring the personal computer, and they told him, like, nobody's ever going to want a computer in their house. If he would just like, oh, well, shit, I guess you're right, and went home, you know, think about how different the scape of the world would be had that not have happened. It would have taken multiple years before anybody else had the balls to try it again. But I mean, eventually probably would have still happened. But think about, like, in his own personal life, had he just been like, oh, yeah, you're probably right. That was a dumb idea. I'm just going to go to the house. Or, you know, there's lots of things like that in history that have happened that way. So to think that, you know, oh, well, I'm just supposed to have it all figured out and just know the first time. And if I don't do it the first time, then it's all screwed. Like, no, every person that has ever come up with anything in the history of the world has had prototypes, has had fails, has had, you know, nothing's ever just the first time. They've just go, oh, shit, this is awesome. It's perfect. It's cool. Let's just do that. Like, everything it takes renderings and it takes time to build. You know, anything you will need to do that's worthwhile takes time to build. So just automatically assuming you're going to be able to do it is just setting yourself up for such heartache and hard time when you can not have it that way.
Yeah. It also just makes me think about, like, you know, we're talking about like the early stages of bariatric eating and things like that, right? So it made me think about when I decided I got to move to the soft food stage, right? Like, I hit that day mark, and I'm like April, where I'm like, I think that I'm just going to wake up and I'm going to be able to eat an egg, right? Like, today's the day, the timer went off, right? Like, it's going to happen. And I make a poached egg for myself, and I put it on a plate, and I had a full-on panic attack. Because I was like, how am I supposed to eat this egg right now? Like, and I was like, but you're supposed to. It's the day. I mean, I remember that internal battle that you talk about, Melanie, is like, but today's the day of soft foods and you should be able to eat this. It's like, well, what if I'm not ready? Like, that's okay too. I can try that again tomorrow, or I can try it again at lunch. You know, it doesn't have to be like in the moment when we think that we decide that we should. That's not real.
No, well, because forcing yourself is another form of failure, because if you force yourself to do it and you can't do it, then you're also proving yourself right again. And then thus ensues another spiral. So, you know, having the wherewithal to know, like you did, like your internal dialogue going, yeah, I don't think this is going to work for me today. So you scrap it, you wait till tomorrow, you try it again. Like, everything about this journey, there's nothing concrete about the journey except for it's fucking hard.
Yeah.
That's the most concrete thing about post-op life is it's hard.
Yeah.
Like, nothing is like the binder, the dates, the calendar, the whatever the hell it may be. It's not just going to be the day. Like, the day I was supposed to do soft foods, I smashed the soft scrambled egg and I fucking loved it. The day I was supposed to do solid, and I left my doctor's appointment. He told me I could start on the like rotisserie, like shredded rotisserie chicken. I stopped and got one on the way home. Like, but specifically just for the fact that, like, it worked for me. Like, it didn't cause me that anxiety, so I was able to move through that in a positive way. But if, like you said, if it's causing you anxiety or you're having a hard time with it, then scrap it and try it again another day. Like, your doctor's not going to be like, how dare you not eat an egg on Tuesday? Tuesday was the day. Like, yeah, you can't see me anymore. Like, it's not going to happen.
But I do want to preface, though, that I had a full-on panic attack for about 2 hours. It was that debilitating. Like, that is kind of my point. Like, an egg this big caused me to feel such fear and like, oh, but I should be at this point. I'm not a bariatric patient if I can't do this. Or last time, my last surgery, I wasn't able to keep food down. So like, it's just going to be the same thing again. That thought process of like, okay, I can try again tomorrow did not happen in the moment.
No,
I literally had to let the moment. I had to let the moment pass. And I had to allow, again, community, my friends, my parents, to say, you can try that again tomorrow. Like, you don't have to, but it took the time and it took the community before I could allow myself to try again tomorrow and not count that as a failure.
We are so wired in our old ways, right? That it's we really do have to pause to let this new reality just even like come up here, right? Like something, we got to give it time to flash before our eyes, because if we just go back to what we were thinking and doing before surgery, after surgery, it's going to have the same result. And I just keep thinking, Natalie, about, I've had the honor of hosting the pre-op meetup in BariNation a few times now. It's one of my favorite things to lead in our community. And what I have found myself saying on repeat, which has also helped me, you know, I feel the panic in everybody's voice in their life about like, I just don't know, like, I don't know what's coming, and I'm gonna buy all the things, and I'm doing all this, and I'm doing all these classes, and right, just panic. And every time I'm meeting with a specific group of people, I'm just like, I need you to stop. I'm just going to tell you right now, you are never going to figure it out. And you are wasting precious energy worrying about this stuff now. I said, you will figure it out when you get there. But you panicking now is only doing yourself, your family, your kids, your friends a disservice, because you are panicking for no reason. Right?
Well, you are
yes.
panicking for a reason. Like, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I think, again,
Yes.
it's the ability to sort of what we need. And sometimes, like in your situation, Natalie, like we can't always ground ourselves. We need other people to ground us, you know?
Yes.
And so like what we can offer, you know, people is like, we need to ground. And so oftentimes I'll use like language around like babies, you know? So like, okay, if you've only been on the journey, like you're 2 weeks post-op, well, 2 week, you know, people, you know, infants that are 2 weeks old, I mean, they're 100% dependent on others. And can we allow ourselves to look at our journeys that way through those phases, you know, where we are growing towards more independence, but can we start by owning we're highly dependent on rules? You know, initially we're highly dependent on, you know, just like processes, you know, different things. And to, again, normalize it. I can't say that word enough, that if we actually own where we really are, then it's like, there's no way for me to know what surgery day is going to be like when I'm pre-op. I can ask all kinds of lovely questions. And I think there's value to like, ask your questions, you know, name your fears, you know, all of those things, you know, engage, like what kind of support system, you know, am I going to have? And people always ask me, well, how much time should I take off? I said, well, here I thought, I mean, I have the luxury in some ways being, you know, self-employed, that I was like, okay, I'm giving myself 7 weeks, which for me was a massive amount of time. And I thought, a couple weeks to recover. Then the 5 weeks, I'm going to get this whole meal prep thing figured out and all these kinds of things. Well, that never happened, because from day one, I never thrived. Like I literally just tank. So at 7 weeks, I worked one day, and the next day I was back in my doctor's office, and he's like, I have to rehospitalize you. Like I wasn't able to keep anything down, no liquids, no nothing. And so 7 weeks, I've been starving for 7 weeks at this point. And he was very good along the way in saying, Melanie, I have a very low threshold for rehospitalization. So like, I always felt safe. Like he wasn't going to leave me high and dry. But when I'm in there every week, or I'm calling like Barb and I, that was my nurse navigator, like all I do is, hey, Barb, it's Melanie, what do you need? Like, what happened? Like, you know, what can I do for you? What test do you, I mean, we were on a very, like, just like, she just did everything for me, which I was so grateful, you know, for all of that. But like, here I thought that I had given myself everything I need. And I had no idea that my journey was going to lead me to feeding tubes and literally having to teach myself how to eat again from the very basics of like, eating food was one of the scariest things I ever had to do when I got, because I was 15 months, you know, on the feeding tube, you know, and so it's like that's a long time to have nothing going down your throat, no swallowing, no, not because even liquids for the longest time was just, I literally had a bag of Gatorade that was going through one tube. It was this dual switch thing, and I had a bag of the enteral feeding, and I just switched back and forth. I did nothing by mouth for months and months and months, and so staring at anything was like, I can't do it. And then the day we all decided that the tube was going to come out, because eventually the nose ones didn't work and I had to get it put in my stomach. And the idea behind that was, it may never come out. I was never promised that I would ever eat again. And then we reach a point of like, do we do this? And it was scary because, and I'll touch it every once in a while, and, and if I ever did plastics, I know it sounds crazy, but I would never want them to take that away because because it's like that, there's like that scar has to stay there because like, it's one of the ones I'm most proud of because I taught myself how to eat again, but I was scared. I'm like, my backup's gone. It's now up to me. And you think about all the things we're talking about and all the wars of the self-fulfilling prophecies, like all that stuff, like you're waging war at all times. And if you try to do it by yourself, or you only use skills of the past and you don't, bring the truth in there and you don't let other people like give you feedback and speak into that, like it is dark. It's a dark, dark place to live.
I think that's why we're also thankful that we found each other. It's also thankful that we have this space to have these conversations. And it's why so many of us are thankful for, the membership community. It is that space that we can find safety to have these conversations, right? And to start working through what this work looks like, because that is scary. And especially in the social media world where you do feel pressure to just portray like everything's great, everything's going well, right? Like I'm in compliance. Oh, everything's good. That is not even close to half of the true story. It's these conversations that actually get us to the place of health. And if we're not careful about sharing our whole story, we're projecting a false narrative, a false reality out to the world about what bariatric surgery and what the work of weight loss surgery actually is. I know it's why all four of us are very passionate about making sure that we share as much of our story as we possibly can, but we know not everybody's there. And that's where that privacy, that's where that safety really comes into play. And if you don't have it, oh my God. And I mean, every single person that I've talked to, they just always say like, if I didn't have this, if I didn't have the membership community, if I didn't have any of this, this would not be where I am today. Or people who become members and they're experiencing 50, 100, 150 pounds of regain. They just always say, if I had this 5 years ago, I wouldn't be in this situation today.
I believe that wholeheartedly. And I mean, that's why my lap band failed. I didn't have anyone. It was just me navigating what I could, didn't listen to my body because I didn't know that was a thing. That you have to do. Right. And then I let it go too long and I was hospitalized. I was septic and I had to have my lap band taken out. Worst day of my life. And I truly, and this is why I'm so passionate. I know April and Jason and Melanie know this, but it's like, this is why it's so important to have that community to say, hey, I haven't been able to eat in a couple days. Oh, maybe you should go to the doctor. And just the simple act of someone saying, that doesn't sound right. You need to go to the doctor. Or maybe you should try this.
Yep. Yeah. Or my favorite, which you guys are classic at. Is that really true, April? Is that really? That's their favorite. They love being my mirror, which thank God, because that is really what we're talking about, right, Melanie? It's a mirror.
Yep. Because we can't see our own blind spots. I mean, that's why they're called blind spots. But, that's why it's easier for other people to look in, on your life and be able to highlight some things for you that you can't see. And that's why we need like the face of another. We need the presence of another because they can lower the temperature. They can bring some containment. They can ground us when we're having a panic attack. They can remind us that we can try again another day. Whatever those things are, like we can't always resource ourselves. Like the whole, like part of all of these, kind of the shadow sides of all these things is like, we have a scarcity mindset. There's been deprivation and somewhere along the way, that something of our needs did not get met. And this is how we coped with that. And so like, that's the dilemma, is like when we risk letting another like have our need met in another way, one, it's going to create anxiety, because all our brain says is the only way we can handle this if you're perfect. The only way you can handle that, is if you go this road alone, or whatever, fill in the blank. And so you take a chance and you tell these two women before you walk on the stage what's really happening. Like, you're breaking that self-fulfilling prophecy. You're challenging, one of those elements of the imposter syndrome. Excuse me, you're actually allowing care to come, and you're believing that it's actually going to land as care. And when it does, that's one of the flags I talked about, is, oh, when I bring my fears or my things to other people, like, good things can come. Now the dilemma is it won't always be perfect. Not everybody's available when you pick up the phone. Not everybody's available. And so you have to then work on, I'm taking a risk in bringing my need vulnerably to this person or that person. And if they're not available, or if they're not there, that then is not the definition. See, I knew it. That's why I don't do that, versus I'm disappointed or I'm sad. And where else can I get my need met? Who else can I try and call? Can I journal for a little bit? Whatever. Like, we have to continue to look for multiple resources. But when we limit that care can only come from one way, success is only one path, like, that is the ultimate sabotage we have, because it won't always work.
And that speaks directly to why we were so excited to have this conversation with you today, right? We set so many goals for ourselves this time of year, right? New Year's resolutions, intentions, whatever you want to call them, right? Like, I'm going to get some things done in my life. But we have these grandiose expectations that things are going to go a certain way, and that they're going to happen in a certain way. And as soon as they don't go to plan, we abandon ship, right? Like, well, I knew this was never going to work. This is not perfect, right? I clearly don't know all the things. And then that right, the self-fulfilling prophecy comes back. I knew this would happen. I knew this would happen. This happens to be, all the time. Right. So really the today's conversation, the point for us bringing it forward is to give us all tools to combat that. So when things don't go right, we can pause, we can pivot, we can shift, we can say, no, this goal, this intention, this wish for my life is still valid, and I still deserve to reach this feeling or to reach this goal. How can I continue to pursue it through a different lens, right? Or through a different way? Because that is what this is all about.
Yeah.
Right. And because you were talking earlier, there are really good things that can come from these mindsets, right? Yes, even though they're detrimental, but like what you were saying, Melanie, right? Like, you started feeling a little bit of the imposter syndrome yourself, and that kind of raised your temperature a little bit. So you went and refreshed yourself on what you already knew, which is a good thing.
Right. So it's allowing to say, like, it can be motivating if it's held within the right context. And the same with the self-fulfilling prophecy. If I believe it's actually going to work out and I foster the positive side of that, then my behaviors are going to follow, which then ultimately can lead towards success. And, sort of like the two of the things that feel really important in terms of how we heal, or how we, is that self-compassion is like essential, and welcoming your humanity. Because those are the things that, like, all of me is welcome in the room, and I need to work on finding my people that stay, that don't leave the room when I bring all of my stuff, because that, again, that hypervigilance goes down, that sense of welcome. Like, it's not just that like growing up, I always had this image of myself that I'm a vending machine, and people just push the same thing again and again and again and again. And part of it is, and so that's all I then brought, And so then I lived into what myself, like that self-fulfilling prophecy is, the people only want me for this. And so then I keep bringing that, and I become actually somewhat of an expert in this type of, way of being, which, I mean, it's the irony of ironies. It's like, people brought me all their problems, so like, what do? I'm now a therapist, but whatever. But so there can be benefits that come out of these kind of things, but truly that sense of like, but I never really felt known. Because all you saw was the thing that brought me, like the accolades, brought me a sense of like worth and value, and that willingness to say, can I bring the rest? And that was a big part why I never wanted to tell my bariatric journey, because mine looked like big F failure, because I never had one successful day from the very, very first day. I was in the ER within days, with dehydration, and it kept going down and down and down. And obviously it became more complicated. And then, multiple surgeries, and then the insult to injury, falling down the stairs when I have a feeding tube, shredding my shoulder, having 2 shoulder surgeries in a boot cast with my ankle. Like it just kept going down, down, down. And it's like, who wants to hear that? Because it's sort of that sense, well, it's so extreme that nobody's going to believe it. So then what happens? My rugged individualist takes over and says, you got this. And like I said, and then I fall through the door, and I'm so grateful, and it's been very healing. This is a fall I'm happy for, not that I did it down the stairs, but that sense of like, oh my gosh, like I just needed some care, and I was so afraid that I wouldn't get it, because I literally had friends leave me in this whole process, like, I was awful. And so it's like, then you start thinking, well, everybody's going to respond that way. There's your self-fulfilling prophecy. If you bring your vulnerability, it will be mocked. You won't be cared for, whatever, all of the things that we do. And that willingness, like, I am worth care, and can I risk bringing my humanity into the room? And if there's somebody in there that's an ass, well, then I don't have to invite them in the next time, versus, again, see, I'm not worth it. It's like, you actually need to go out of the room, not me, and we can start working on filtering. Like, I can't imagine that there isn't anyone, if we sat down with on their bariatric journey, that has had to let go of relationships. Yeah. Like, it's a guarantee, because like we're drawn to what sort of like keeps our little systems alive. And if we start to change, some of that's just not attractive anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me think about the community, right? Our bariatric community. And April, Jason, and I, we talk a lot about how we're like addicted to hanging out with our Bari fam and our bariatric friends, and are going to retreats and doing these meetups. And it is addicting. But I think what you said, Melanie, is exactly it. We can bring the rest of us to the table. Like, there's enough room for us we're not just bariatric patients. We're not just, previously obese or chronically obese people. We are, friends, we're aunts, we're uncles, we're, daughters, and we can bring all of that with us to the table, to the event, to whatever. And that's where the healing comes from, because we can bring all of us, all of ourselves, right, to these things.
I was thinking the exact same thing, right? When she said that, I was like, oh, that's why. And I also think too, that's why it's really easy for me to identify, like, oh, that person is not my person. Right. And really it's because they didn't accept a part of me, or they didn't believe a part of my story that I told was truthful. And it's like, you don't want to accept, or you can't accept all of me. So deuces. And to get to the point where it's like, oh, I don't need to mourn or be worried about that. That's not a me, that's a them thing. Right. So, I mean, it's just like, and I think that's why sometimes it is hard for people in the community when you just don't feel that you have been fully accepted yet, and you've tried, or you feel like you've tried. It takes time. It really does take, you're really putting yourself out there in a lot of different places, and the rejection is real. I mean, that's not a fake thing, right? If you're feeling that way, it's because that, you weren't fully accepted. And the goal is to keep trying.
Right. And also owning, where are you reenacting? So let's, stick with the example you give, like, of the rejection. Well, are you bringing something, like, are you kind of owning, like, so I can say this in this context. So I was leading some groups in another arena of life, and and this woman walks into the room, and she was extra. So I'll just leave it at that in terms of kind of how she presents herself. But I first of all, I never heard this phrase this way, but she just kind of, she goes, "I'm a narcissistic hog." And this is room, and everyone was waiting. I think they're like, "Oh no, you're not." They're waiting for me to do something. I said, "Yes, you are." She was, and I said, "But that doesn't disqualify you from being in the room." And to see her face settle down, it's saying, if you're bringing something that invites the rejection, that's your self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm going to present this way because I already believe it, and therefore I'm going to get the reaction that I'm expecting. But since I'm in control, I mitigate my disappointment around it. And what I did was I punctured that sucker for her, and her whole body settled. And it required her to show up differently and go, what do I do with the fact that somebody welcomed me in all of my flair?
Oh my God. I totally get, we say, we say something all the time, and we believe it at our core. There is no such thing as a bad bariatric patient. And people come at me and us all the time, and they're like, "Oh, I'm just such a horrible, oh, I did this. Oh," and all three of us were just like, "No, you're not. There's no such thing as a bad bariatric patient." And they almost want to like fight us on it. And we're like, "You made a decision."
No, but I did this. And it's like, cool. And
cool. Okay. And you can literally just see them. That's what happens. And then they're like, "Oh shit."
Well, it's the comfort in being accepted at what you perceive as your worst. If they'll perceive me at my worst, I don't have to show up at my shiniest to be accepted. It doesn't have to be on my best day that I get accepted. I can come as I am, flaws and all, and I'm going to be welcomed in so that we can actually unpackage and begin the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the door opening to doing the work, because really, and what I just figured out for myself, it was like, oh, I took away my last excuse to continue to not do the work. I'm not a bad bariatric patient. I'm struggling making decisions that are aligned to my bariatric life. Oh, okay. So all I have to do is make a different decision. You know what I mean? It was just like,
right.
Oh my God, like, how I was just so angry at myself for thinking it the whole time. But then the more that I really worked it out in my head, it was like, oh my God, there is no such thing as a bad bear. It's not a thing.
Right. You always have agency. Like, you always have agency. Like, I can make a different choice at any moment of any day. Mm-hmm. And obviously I'm sure someone could probably make some comment, well, what about this situation? I'm sure there's always, but in the realms of the journey that we're on, if we want to stick to the bariatric world, there is never a point on your bariatric journey that you don't have agency. Even when I couldn't eat, I had agency to use my voice. I had agency to ask for care. I kept fighting, for more, whatever it is that I needed. But when we take away our own agency, then it's like, well, it's April's fault. She didn't include me in this, or it's, Natalie's fault because I didn't get invited to the coffees that she talked about on her Instagram the other day, or whatever, it's like, that sense of like, no, like, I think we have to really own, like, where am I handing power to another person or to a system or to, again, fill in the blank,
to a mindset.
Yeah, to determine my well-being, to determine my welcome, and to determine what I can and cannot do on my bariatric journey. We always have a choice.
Well, and now being able to name the things that are taking away some of that agency, self-fulfilling prophecy, and the imposter syndrome, we can name it so we can deal with it, so we can take that control back. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we can use that to achieve our goals. And like you said, we can spin it in a positive way. Oh, I want to be a perfectionist at this, or this is what's showing up. Okay, well, I don't need to do that, but it can drive me to learn a little bit more, to try a different way, to re-engage, to step back so that I can come back, right? It takes away, when we name it, it takes away all of our excuses for not doing the work.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can move from catastrophic thinking to like, I'm actually going to begin to believe, like, I can do this.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What were you going to say now?
Oh, I was just going to say, it takes the pressure away, lowers the temperature, right? I mean, how pressurized do we feel
Oh my God.
when we're in those moments,
Mhm.
like we're about to burst.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it shows. I mean,
Yep.
again, going back to Jason in Portland, it's like we could tell you were about to burst.
Mhm.
But when you
About to-
just take the time to release the pressure,
to name it publicly in a safe space, right? And look at how much you have accomplished really since then, Jason. I mean, you really are a very different person. Same thing, your persona has shifted, how you talk about what you're struggling with has shifted, how you talk about your wins has shifted. It's very different. It
Yeah,
truly is.
there was a lot of pressure that was taken off of me. It was almost like losing, the weight again for myself, because I get so bogged down with the pressure I put on myself. It's not from anybody else. That's the crazy part about it is that nobody looked at me that day and thought any different of me. Nobody wasn't accepting of me the way I was. Everybody was super excited to see me, to see us, to talk to us, to get a moment with us. And in my own head, I completely trashed the first 30 minutes I was even there at the event, simply because I could not get out of my own way to enjoy what was really happening. So I was glad to be able to have that relief after, speaking it into existence, so that I could then go on and enjoy. So, for the people who didn't know this, but have watched the award show or were at the award show, legitimately everything you saw me do on stage was 5 to 7 minutes, post completely melting down and freaking out backstage. So that's the leap you can make by just relieving yourself of the pressure.
Yep. I swear to God, I think in 2023, I'm going to get multiple tattoos, and one of them is going to say lower the temperature. Right. And these are all strategies. These are all tools that we can use to lower our own temperature so that we can get to the place where we can move forward and make decisions that are aligned to our goals. That's all it is. That's all that this is. And I think we're so used to living in this high pressure environment. We're so used to our temperature rising, ourselves raising our own temperature. No, it's about dialing down that temperature. It's about making sure that pot never boils over. And when the more you practice this, I can realize now, oh, I'm working myself up. My temperature is rising. I need to employ some strategies now so I don't go there. And it has really helped me stay in a better headspace. It's not that things are not still stressful or bad, or that I worry about. I worry about stuff all the time, but at least I can get to the headspace of these tools today, right? And lowering the temperature, naming what I'm feeling, asking for help when I need it. Lord knows that I need it all the time. And when people come at me with oh my God, what's going to happen? What are you going to do? I don't know. I don't know. I don't have the answer, but I know people in my world that can help me discover the answer, and I will deal with it when we get there. But you coming at me with this is not helping me, and it's not helping you. So no. And if you continue, and this is the other thing, I've taken a step further. If you continue to come at me with this, you will not be allowed to come at me at all. Mm-hmm. So if you want to continue to have a conversation with me, if you want to continue to interact with me, you cannot and you will not.
Well, and we talk about advocating for ourselves all the time, and you can definitely advocate with friends, family, support, all that. Yeah. But you can also advocate for yourself, of yourself, because
with yourself.
It's the same way. Like when you try to talk yourself out of something, advocating for yourself to yourself is legitimately a thing, and a lot of people don't look at it that way. But you legit, it's an internal struggle. Like Natalie said in her head, she has this inner dialogue and monologue going back and forth. But it's the same thing. You're legitimately advocating for yourself to yourself.
Dude, with my Peloton, I hit my 100 rides, right? Yeah, I did. And I was like, oh my God. Most of those days I was like, I don't want to ride that bike. My butt hurts. This is dumb. I don't want to get sweaty. Why am I even caring about this? Right? Like all this blah, 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 blah. Imposter syndrome. You're not an athlete. Somebody called me an athlete the other day and I think I smacked him, but again, imposter syndrome, whatever. But then I just said, but movement has to be a part of your life. You are a bariatric patient. Movement is what helps you keep your set point low. You are moving to keep your set point low today. Maybe tomorrow you're going to be motivated to move. Cool. Then you're going to be motivated to move because you love it or you enjoy it or whatever. But today you don't want to do it. You ain't got no choice. You set a goal for yourself. This is what you want to achieve. You are going to do it despite whatever else is going on up there. That was the heavy lifting that I had to do to get to 100. You just have to do it. I had to answer my own questions. I had to build the time in. I had to just be firm with myself, firm with others. But it happened. It worked. And now I'm 3 pounds away from the lowest weight I ever saw on a scale. Not even an intentional goal of any of this, right? This is just like the icing on the cake, so to speak. But when all of these things are aligned, when all these things are clicking, when you're really in tune with your feelings, who knew? Really good things happen. Weird.
And some of those feelings, we have to get into the habit of pushing back on them. Because what you're talking about is I had all these feelings and I can talk back to my feelings. Like you can talk back to head hunger, say, yeah, I no, I'm not going to eat. I already know I've had my calories for the day, or I already know, that sense of you're bored, or, like I saw something that the people put in their fridge, like, you're not hungry, shut the damn door, like, and it's heavy fridge or whatever. And I think it's hysterical, on one level, it's not meant to be shamey, but it's sort of like sometimes we need little like props to, remind ourselves like, oh, I can do that. Or I have agency. I have choice. Anything that we're, where we get stuck, like you could put a sticky note somewhere to sort of like, remind you of these kinds of things. And I think that's just part of that important component is I have more power than what I want. Because I want to, I don't want to act like I do, but I have enough power to make change. And we have to look at the energy expenditure as well. If I'm treating this journey like it's a 50-yard dash, I'm going to burn out. Like we have to accept that this is for the rest of our life. And in some ways that can feel daunting, but I hope it also says like, I've got my whole life to pivot and pivot and pivot again.
You said it best, right? Like there is no end. There is no end to this, right? And if we start thinking that we're going to get to the place where we're going to go check, done with this, it's going to be a real rude awakening.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And honestly, it's pretty exciting that we don't have an end. Like that's what I've really come to the conclusion of is like, oh, this gets to be my life. Like, how cool is that we have this awesome tool, we have this awesome community. We can live this life as long as we're alive. And that is really cool. And I think like what Melanie said is like taking that ownership back instead of being feeling like my life is daunting, that I have to do all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And this is crazy and too much and whatever. It's like, no, like I get to do this for the rest of my life.
Yeah. I get to craft the best life that I could have envisioned for myself. I have the power. I have the agency. I have the resources. Like when
you have the time. That's the best part. So many people put this, this invisible time clock on everything. And that's why there's where a lot of the anxiety comes from is, oh my God, my 12 months is almost up. The honeymoon's almost over and I'm going to be screwed if I don't get it right. And just calm down. Like April's proof to show you, she's over 3 years post-op and she's still losing weight. Like she put herself back in, like we always say, you're either out of compliance or in compliance. She put herself back in compliance and changed up a little bit of her routine and she's back at it. Like she's still losing weight and it's way after the honeymoon period. So we don't have to like dispel those rumors that that's the only way you can lose weight. Like it's the gift of time. And that's a beautiful thing.
Right. And not only am I still losing weight, I am discovering new things about myself. I'm making brand new connections. I'm learning things that I never would have learned had I not gone down this journey. Like it's every day is something new and exciting and fascinating and meaningful. And like there's passion in my life most days. Not very many people can say that. But because I'm doing the work, because we're all doing the work together, we get to create that passion. We get to spark that passion in our lives and in the lives of others. That's pretty incredible.
Absolutely.
In the words of April, that's fucking rad.
Do I say that often?
Yes.
No.
We might need a coffee cup or
Oh, we do. Oh, we absolutely do. I don't know if you guys know this. My very first words that I ever spoke in life were "oh shit." Oh shit. Those were my first words.
On brand.
Right? On brand. And then my most memorable public outing in my entire life was when I was like 3 years old. We walked into the Washington State Fair, and the theme that year was Get Quackin'. You know, there was this big, huge, giant rubber duck in the pond. And I walked in, and here's my cute little self. And I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, look at that size of that fucking duck. And I was like 3. And my parents were like, oh, whose child is this? Like, oh my God. But I grew up around dad and car, you know. So, I mean, I come by it naturally. Really, it's my mother. We can blame my mother.
My first word was cracker, so also.
That's also on brand. On brand. Totally fine. Oh my gosh. Okay, this conversation has rocked all of our brains. No surprise there. Melanie, is there one final thing, thought, idea, question that you would like to leave our friends with?
I think I'll just go back to what I have said a few times in here is like, you know, can you normalize your humanity? And if you welcome your humanity, the things that we're talking about, like it will help you calm your body. It will help you, like, you know, have clear thinking. It will allow you to take risks to, you know, reach out and engage community. And so I think that sense of, you know, what are those parts of me basically, what are the parts of me that I'm spending so much energy on pushing out of the room? And can I take a risk in 2023 and bring one part, you know, one more part in the room and invite one more witness, you know, because what we really need is people to bear witness to our lives. Like no one's here to fix, no one's here to that. But as we have witnesses to, you know, our sense of self and our humanity, again, there's containment, there's care, there's soothing, there's all the things we need that allow us to continue on in our journeys and stir hope. So that's what I would say is take a little less energy they're using to push it out of the room. And who could I invite in the room? And what parts of me am I willing to take a risk to bring in the room?
We know how hard that is. All 4 of us have had to do that. But we hope part of the power of this conversation is that you start to have the evidence that you see that it can be done and that you will survive it and that really good things can come out of some of those risks.
Absolutely.
That's why we do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, my friend, you want to take us out?
Yes, ma'am. Melanie, we appreciate you for spending the time with us and imparting your wisdom and vast knowledge to us and the amazing people that follow and listen. So thank you so much for that. To the community, we appreciate you for all the love, share, support, the likes, the subscribes, all the things. Because without doing any of that, we wouldn't be here. So we appreciate you so much for supporting us in way more ways than we could support you, because it's helped us all at one point in time or another, and we can't thank you enough. So at the end of the day, just remember, you've got this, we've got you, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, friends.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.